working here 7 years. I've been working on that machine for me.
Okay, very cool.
That's awesome. That's a lot of experience. That's the over on normal experience level. He's doing well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thank you for joining. Let me just thank you all for coming. I'm going to go ahead and hand the meeting off to our esteemed host, Ken Huizenga. Ken, we got some new people. You might want to introduce yourself. But Ken, it's your meeting, buddy. Off to the races, man. It's all yours.
Morning, everybody. Great to see you all. I love this day. It gets my varnish on paper blood boiling, and I'm excited to talk to you all. I see that we have a couple of new people. Joe, we just heard a little bit about your experience level. Natalie, why don't you fill us in on your background and how you ended up on a Jet Varnish?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been here with Konica Minolta for just 2 months now. I originally came from the digital and offset book publication world, and I've got a bit of a design background. So I find, the Evo is really fun to work on because you get to use a bit more of your creative eye when designing embellishment files.
And do you design them as well as run them on a Jet Varnish?
Yes.
Wow, that's a great combination to be able to fix your own files and not have to go back to the beginning. That's awesome.
Yeah, I find the software just to be like super intuitive, kind of like a Photoshop Lite, if you will. But it's been a blast to work with so far.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So we have some real experts here. We've got founders and developers, and we have pre-press, and we have designing, and a lot of operating experience here. Do you want to ask the first question about any issues or problems you're having, or maybe tell us about one of your recent successes?
Yeah, for sure. So I am very new with series. I haven't experienced too many issues with it yet, but I'm just curious to pick your brains about like overall workflow. So I guess I'm just curious to get as much knowledge as I can, but I don't have any particular questions as of yet.
When you say workflow, are you talking about from the time you have a successful file, or are you talking about, give us an idea of where your hiccups or challenges are in the workflow procedure?
Okay, yeah. I mean, right now I'm not really experiencing any difficulty with actual like file setup, but more so just like general operating standpoint from the beginning to the end. I find because here at Konica Minolta, my main job is to produce samples for people who are going to buy these machines, and sometimes I'm experiencing challenges with running like long runs, like anything longer than 50 copies. Sometimes I find that the scanner might not work properly, or sometimes there's issues with like double feeds. And I'd like to know about best processes for preventing those issues.
When it comes to feeding, I mean, if you haven't been on a lot of production machines that have feeders, there's some real simple tricks you can start with. First is when you're blowing your sheets and you take a look at the vacuum pump when it first comes on, you just want to be lifting 3 or 4 sheets. Right? You don't want to use the blowing to actually feed the paper in. You want to actually bring them up to the head. So usually you want to see about a 5mm gap between the feed head and the top sheet of paper. So by just adjusting those blow nozzles with those little gates that are on there, you can go to the top couple holes only and just blow 3 or 4 sheets up. That will definitely help you with doubles. Winding the sheets is just super important too, especially if you're coming off of toner devices like Konica Minolta.
What do you mean by winding? Can you explain that to us?
Just to go ahead and take that sheet of that pile of paper, put it on its side, push on the back few copies, hold them with your thumb, and really move that air from front to back, from lead edge to tail edge, over and over again. Because as that toner dries, we all know when toner devices print, they use a charge. Sometimes the charge just needs to be broken up. So don't be afraid to take the side of that paper and knock it a couple of times on a table as well. So you're trying to break that. You're trying to degauss that charge on the pile of paper and get that static out of there. The other thing obviously is curl. You want to take the curl out. So if you're running anything heavy, which you typically are in a jet varnish because it doesn't run a lot of text weight stock, do your best to flatten it out or use wedges on the back corners to flatten that pile out, because the feeder does not see that, the warping of the sheet. It just wants to grab them one at a time and put them in. So anything you can do to make that pile flat is a huge help. And if you can, also by winding the sheets, it cools them down. So if you were to take them right off of your machine, which you might do because you're in that environment, give them a few minutes for that heat to dissipate.
Interesting.
Because the heat also increase static and cause a lot of problems with getting sheets in there.
How about Joe, Matt, and Marco? I mean, you guys have been around these machines for a long time. What do you guys kind of see as some of the great tricks from a feeding standpoint?
Depending the format and depending the machine. Which what machine do you use?
Mostly the KM one.
But for the Jet Varnish Evo with the pallet feeder.
Oh yeah, so it would be the Evo with the pallet feeder. Also the Acurio Shine 3600.
Yeah, everything that can set is compliant basically with the Acurio Shine, and the Acurio Shine has a better feeding mechanism that Ken's 3DS and Matthew's 3DSs.
Yeah.
And on the Evo, you need to play with pickup head, and also what Ken said with those on the pallet feeder you have those two blowers for the side of the paper, that you can set it up, and you need to set it up quite depending on the thickness of the paper. You need to set it up quite good to have the steady input for the larger batches and everything. So you need to play around with the feeder, and feeder will be probably the best, the most demandable part of the machine will be feeder on any of the machines. Believe me, I worked on all sheet fed machines on Jet Varnish, and always the feeder. The feeder panel is always on GVTI. Is the feeder panel open and play around? Yeah.
Natalie, if I could ask you a question, I've had people ask me on KM1 what you end up setting your Corona unit to in order to get that best flow of the varnish onto the ink. Do you have anything to add when it comes to that issue?
I will say it's really going to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on, the paper that you're loading into the KM1. I'll be honest, I've only been operating it for about 2 months now, so I don't have much useful information there. But generally, like with KM1 prints, you are always going to need Corona. I'm not entirely sure why, but that's the most answer I can give you right now.
Well, that has to do with surface tension, and we've had many calls about that issue, but we can talk more about that in the future, or I can talk to you offline and give you some hints on what to do for that. Joe, do you have anything to add that might help Natalie?
I think that with the feeders and such, it's kind of a good point where you just kind of got to play around with it, especially on the Evo. Or like we were saying with airing out the paper. The other day we even had a problem where it was feeding too much, or we were getting constant doubles because it was a very small sheet. But they were also curved a lot because they had an aqueous coating on them, and that was one thing that we had to deal with a lot because they had such an up curl on the sheet. We had to down curl them, put a lot of air in them, and then I was messing with feeder as well too, just pile height and how much air was blowing into it. And that was giving me a little bit of trouble, honestly. But it just kind of a case by case basis on which paper you're running, whether it's lambed or not. But yeah, we've just had kind of just got to play with it a little bit and see how it goes with each stock.
Yeah, we actually heard a lot of people talking about the issues with curl with lamination. And I think one of the really easy things that we found was if you switch to like a nylon-based laminate, it has micro holes in it that basically allows the paper to breathe through the laminate and gives you a much flatter sheet. So that's something that I think a couple of the different users told us in the past. Look for nylon-based laminates if you're having curl issues with the lamination. Cool.
Joe, what's up with you? Anything that you want to share?
I was wondering if you guys had any insight on the breakdown of how grid mode works for the AIS scanner.
Since Matt is laughing, I think we're going to let him take this one.
Oh my God. I'm so round and round with that thing. I mean, usually I work through the process. I try to let the full automatic mode do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm getting too much variation, things are starting to warp or twist, I add to the exclusion area. If that doesn't fix it, I still get more issues, which sometimes it just doesn't want to read the sheet. It's too dark. There's not enough points, whatever. Every single job that I run, every damn one, I require on the edge some Japanese crop marks. Now, MGI has a different opinion on these. And they want like like a bullseye without the crosshairs. But I do not have success with that. I was given the file, I used it, the scanner just does not want to see it. The reason I do this, and I think I've thrown all the sheets away, is because we do almost all of our imposition for business cards, etc., on the Fiery at the Irides. So we get all of the artwork as a one-up. The operator chooses a preset mask that creates the imposition, 21 up, 24 up, 36 up, whatever, on whatever size sheet it's supposed to be. And then they include those Japanese crop marks. Now, those are built into the Fiery, and they used to have a way that you could customize those, but that kind of went away with one of the most recent updates to the Fiery EF. And I don't know why, but it just seemed to have vanished. So the Japanese crop marks that it generates are just what it does. And God, I wish I had a sample of that here. Actually, I do. Hang on a sec.
Joe, while he's looking for that, do you have access to being able to put those crop marks down? Like, what are you using to print?
Typically, it's a prepress that does the print, but we do the MGI targets with the no crosshairs in the middle, just like the target bullseye shapes.
Okay.
So these are all the marks that are put on a typical business card layout.
Mm-hmm.
And these are generated in the Fiery. And it actually worked so well for registration purposes to create the edge on that sheet. You need to be able to see what's on the edge. Now, the scanner will go in and it will look at like, 170 some odd points, somewhere in the middle. But if you can give it that frame, if you can, and they need to be a specific, or within a specific range apart, and you need about a minimum of 16 targets on a sheet. So you're going to have 8 down one side and 8 down the other. So that's typically what we do on everything that we run. So this sheet has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It has 14 targets. If they're too far apart, when you're setting grid mode, it will give an error. It will say they're not close enough. There's not enough of them. Whatever. It needs a certain amount to work with. If you give it too much, you'll probably confuse it as well. So these are all about 2.5 inches apart, just for reference.
Is that what you use, Joe? I'm kind of curious. What do you?
If you have, I can grab a sheet of what we do. Do you mind giving me 1 second? I can grab that and I'll show you
Sure.
what we
Please do.
But also,
Sure.
I was curious, on those marks, do you do horizontal as well, or just the vertical on either side of the sheet?
Just on the sides, not on the top.
Okay.
Now on the Fiery, when they impose on the cards, they are there, but we don't use them.
Yeah. That's something you had a point you wanted to make?
Yeah, the maximum space is 15 centimeters. And Matt, you cannot use those down there because immediately when when you push the grid mode down there, you will get on the cross line also the position for the mark. And in grid mode, all positions need to be found. So let's call them also key points, like on a full scanner mode, but all the key points need to be found. If one is missing, he will not print.
Mhm, mhm. So, which is a good thing because you'll just get a kernel error and the sheet just goes through blank and the machine usually just stops. So you're not wasting anything. That's actually a very good thing.
Yeah, on a full scanner mode, if the key points are below 50%, then it will stop.
Yep.
On the next, and on a grid mode, all marks need to be found, all the grid points.
And ironically, it usually finds them all unless you're using a sheet such as Stardream or something that's speckly or shiny and has a reflective quality to it. Then it does distort the view of the scanner a little bit, and it has trouble seeing those marks. The marks are typically a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch, or a 1/2 point to 3/4 point in thickness. If you want a better, if you're having a difficult stock, I'll use a 3/4, a 0.75 point line on those marks. And so I step through, I start with the full scanner mode. If that doesn't work, then I move on to grid mode and set that up the way that I was taught to do it, which is rather tedious. And then you do an acquisition, and then you make sure your positioning is exact. And I'll tell you what, when you're done, it is like on. And I use them for almost every job that I run like this, which is all the finding information, all the names on these cards change, but the position of where the varnish falls is the same every time. Every day we get these cards, they come in on web to print, we impose them, they come to the machine, I say, pick this mask, and I run the job, and it drops the varnish exactly where it needs to go without setting anything up.
Yeah.
It's already set up, and it's only looking at these marks on the side of the sheet. And
this is the point of the grid mode.
Yeah,
to work like this.
It's efficient.
This is the development of the grid.
Yeah.
So I have a sheet of the grids that we do here. I don't know if you can see it, but I don't have great comments from here, but I am using the typical targets. And these are all, we do variable data for these as well. So I couldn't even really set these sheets up if I wanted to, because I'll get like a stack of 100, let's say, and it's variable data for each one. So it's not like I can go in and move them around. So we do use grid mode with these, and I've had great success with it. But they almost all fall in essentially the perfect spot every time. But on other jobs where I need to do like a make ready to set up the job, I wanted to do grid mode, but I had trouble setting it up myself if I didn't have the targets already on there. And I was wondering if there was a way to like run grid mode yourself if you didn't have the targets on there, or like if there was any situation where you could use grid mode when you weren't already set up with either the Japanese crop marks or the MGI targets.
I don't think so. I mean, you need those consistent spacings. The grid is looking for that. Everything needs to be about 2 inches apart. It needs to run down each side of the sheet. It has very specific requirements. The only thing beyond that I've used is crop mark mode. But then if you get a tailing, you get a shift in the sheet, then you don't get the red. If registration is not important, then I'll just use crop mark anyway, sometimes because it's easier. And then I'll just use the leading edge crop marks to register that point. It actually works better than you think it does, and I use it more than you would think that I would.
I would also add that if you go to the full scan mode and you just exclude everything but a particular set of crop marks or a particular set of key elements that are consistent in your variable run, that works well too, because that what you've done is you've taken, like Matt said, the 172 points that it normally does. You give it 60 to think about, and it seems to do a really good job that way.
Or you just exclude the entire finding area, the entire card, and just have it look for the edge. But the problem with that is that sometimes when it's automatically looking for those points, it will more likely see what's all in the middle rather than what's on the edge. So getting it to actually look at those targets on the edge is quite a task, and a lot of times I can't get it to do it.
Open editor, and delete the rest of in the middle of the file, and then he will try to find on the edge key points, you know, because he's finding all over the sheet. And if you have the key points, good key points for its algorithm on the page, he will find it, and then you will put the exclude area around. But if you delete it from the file, he will not find it because everything will be white, and he will use 170 key points, what is finding, to search on this, only on this part. So you will get more key points around. You need to think what the algorithm sees and what the scanner sees. If he doesn't have the data in the file, he will not search on that part of the picture because it's white.
Yeah, that's awesome. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I did
So you're
too.
talking about on the black layer, right? You'd erase your you have your alpha layer and your black layer. You'd erase
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
we've
in
done that
editor.
before as well.
Just in editor, just open the black layer, delete the, just remember to take the picker and put when you delete the background, to put it on his white according to ICC. So 16-17 percentage of the black to get the gray, the same. So I always teach the customers when I do the operator training how to remove some parts. Firstly, you open the layer, then took the picker, took the background color, and just set up and delete. So when it deletes the background, immediately puts the picker color, that gray of 15% of something or something. Because if you have the clear white on the page, you will get an error. You can run with it, no problem. But you will get an error from GVTI that you don't have good IC profile.
Okay,
Because
that's
his ICC profile is 15%. The white is 15% gray, 50% black.
Joe, was that helpful?
Oh yes, definitely. I know when Matthew, you brought up that you do an acquisition when you're doing your jobs. I was wondering why you choose to do that, or having like a no CMYK file sent over to you and using that as your registration.
Well, I that's what I start with. I usually have a mask and it's sent to the machine and all that stuff. But a lot of times there's just enough of a discrepancy, because what they're trying to do in pre-press is reproduce this in an accurate way when they send the file. And then what they're actually doing is they're creating an imposition on the Irides. So those are two different creations for that grid. And if it's off like a 16th of an inch, it can cause some problems. So if you reacquire it, then that seems to undo any of that discrepancy, because now you've made some manual adjustments in actually how it positions between where the mask is versus the image underneath. Does that make sense?
Yeah, when you do your acquisition, would you try to do it equal to speed that you would run the job at, or would you do a slow acquisition to get a better and more, let's say, like stable image when it's going through?
Yeah, I do slow. So I do it during setup. I do it when I'm setting the targets, when I'm setting where it's going to look for those grid points.
Okay.
So I set that all up. I set up the preset. Then I do an acquisition. I make an adjustment. I make sure everything is still set. I go back and look and make sure the grid points are set and that the preset is set. And then I usually run it and it's just spot on.
Okay.
And the weird thing is nobody really taught me how to use grid mode. So I don't even know if I'm doing it right, but that's what works.
Yeah.
That's what the community's for, man.
Yeah.
How many of you do your initial scan, your first print, and how off is the first print from the scan? Like, how big are the adjustments that you guys have to make once that first sheet comes through?
0.2 millimeters, maybe.
That's about what I would have seen as well. You too, Joe?
If I have the proper file sent over to me, because sometimes I won't have like a matching no CMYK file. If I just have my alpha layer, then it's kind of up to how much we do the work. But if I have the right files, yeah, I'd say within a millimeter usually. If I run it, it should it almost is right on if everything's working properly and I get the files over the way that they should be.
Now, Joe, when you set up your files with the scanner, do you use static pieces? Do you print a few static pieces and then print your variable file, or do you actually use extra setups from the variable file?
If for the variable data ones, those ones are perfect every time. But if we have a job that's like an outside job, occasionally we'll get just files from the customers and it won't be set up the way that we'd like them to. And then from there, I'd have to do an acquisition. And then in that case, sometimes it'll be off and I'm going to do my adjustments. But if we have the files come over properly, then it usually I can run basically like 1 or 2 make readies just to work on quality, see how it comes up the way I like it. But for the most part, everything will fall right in place. And maybe I'll have to like shrink the UV a little bit here or there, just a little tweaks. But the position wise, it's usually spot on.
The reason I ask is because sometimes when I would do variable postcards, I didn't want to ruin a single sheet. So I always had prepress give me a file that had a static image and eliminate the areas that had the variable. And then I didn't waste a single variable piece. So
Yeah.
I guess on piles of business cards where a name's changing, that's a little different. You always have a few extra of each name, huh?
Yeah.
And Joe, how do you work with the VDP through the barcode scanner or just with the plain files?
We do the barcode scanner, and then that pulls it up. I wasn't there when you set it up, but we already have it set up so it'll pull up the variable data through, I think it's called like OP. It'll pull up automatically through the scanner, and it comes out. Yeah, and it's all foiling too. The variable data ones we do, and unfortunately I don't even get a make ready on these. It's just what we have is what I get. But for the most part, unless we have like a wrinkle in the foil, I haven't had any issues. We just pull it up. I already have a job ticket made for it. I paste a job ticket, and it just runs perfect.
Okay, nice.
Any other question for our esteemed panel?
I think right now that would be good.
Or any successes? Anything cool that you guys have run, or anything? Last time I think we figured something out that Adam couldn't make it today, but Adam figured out that if he ran a clear holographic foil on top of a metallic foil, it gives him kind of a really cool looking, almost iridescent foil color, which I thought was insane. Anybody figure anything cool recently, or anything fun?
I haven't tried it. I've been meaning to try that technique.
Dude.
I haven't had anything that just would really be worth it. And I only have a test roll of that clear holographic foil. So, because they only sell it in 200-foot lengths, it's just really hard to get. So,
well, I'm sending you a job. Maybe you could test it on mine.
Okay.
Don't forget too, those foil companies will provide samples. Crown especially, they'll tail off a little bit for you on another run and give you, it might only be 50 feet, but it will be enough for you to play around with. So don't be afraid to ask. I know, Natalie, you probably have to use conical foil. So I don't know if you realize that there's a whole world of foil out there that you don't know about yet. And when you figure it out, it's going to open your creative window like, immensely.
Yeah, we actually just got some test rolls from Crown, so haven't had too much success with like the red or blue foils. Like I find that it doesn't stick quite the way I want to, but the holographic one has been like a dream to work with so far. But we are actively testing out foils from as many suppliers as we can get, because we don't want to limit ourselves to just the MGI foil.
Yeah, call K-Laser.
Yeah, their foil is the best adhesion of any foil that I ever ran.
It's a facility in California. They also have a facility in Florida, which is just for textiles and industrial. But in California, they deal with polymer-based adhesion.
Yeah, and Sammy Chen is a great guy to talk to and has an incredible amount of knowledge too. If you ever want to pick his brain about foil, he's an amazing guy. Yeah, the adhesion is definitely an issue. I got to ask, since you're using some of the newest Konica Minolta foil, what temperature are you putting it down at?
It really depends on what paper we're running. Like for the crown foil, we usually go to like 115. At least that's what I put in the software. Sometimes we'll go like lower, like 100. But yeah.
That's awesome because they were making a change to run a cooler foil, Konica was, and I wondered if they had gotten there because early on we were sometimes having to run 140 degrees on foil, which not gets it to stick well, but then it offers a lot of wrinkling and other challenges that go along with it. So if you're able to run at 100, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the new ones are around 100, 110, dependable on the iPhone machine. Now on Acurio Shine on iPhone 1, I did it on 100, 110, something like this, gold and silver at the customers.
Sometimes I have that temperature gauge all the way down as far as it will go, and I have the speed up all the way as high as it will go. I've got the pressure pulled back a little bit, and it's still, the adhesion is still too high. I get that spray look, or it tends to burn some of the toner a little bit. So sometimes I think they're getting to be a little too low on this. I wish they would come back up a little bit, but you're all right. The higher temperatures were definitely a problem because it would scorch the toner, and that would end up with a lousy looking piece. It just looks burnt.
Yeah, you will get the transfer sometimes on some of toner and some of foil transfer of the foil on the toner. Slicking, basically you get the slicking if you go, because Kev knows the MG Meteor Unlimited Color machine with the iFoil is working automatic slicking. After printing, you do the foiling. It's the same iFoil like yours, just named iFoil T, and it runs around 150 or 155 degrees Celsius, and you're printing the black, putting the foil on, and then you overprint it with the toner again to get the metallic look like.
Yeah. Actually, I think Ken, Ken, did you ever show that video to the group about what you built onto your iFoil to do sleeking on the envelopes?
Oh man, I'd have to dig that back up.
Dude,
again.
send it to me. I'll share it next time.
Yeah, I was stamping envelopes in the iFoil unit. So print toner and then overheat toner and shingle envelopes through the iFoil only without any varnish at all. So it was one of those things, you know, you have customers that go, we want foil envelopes. Okay, well, you're going to have to do about 10,000 because we're going to have to print them flat. We're going to have to foil them traditionally. We're going to have to convert them. And it's an expensive proposition. But somebody says, you know, I have these 100 beautiful imitations that you just did on the Jet Varnish, and we would love to put them in some sort of fancy envelope. Can you foil the envelopes? Well, you don't say no to a customer. So you try everything with the tools that you have. But Konica didn't want to hear about that.
No, this is not at all sanctioned by MGI or Konica, but that's really.
We'll keep that between us here.
We will. But...
Yeah, my customer sometimes print on the toner and put it in Jet Varnish without the mask, plain paper, and use the feeding, use everything. You know, you put the lamps on a 0 or shut them off, and use just the iFoil for the slicking.
Well,
yeah, but I do have to give one disclaimer. This goes back to maybe 1250, Konica melted 1250, 1070. That earlier toner, it seemed to work well for sleeking. I know that's what MGI had put on their print unit that they hooked up to. Kevin, what was that model? That had the unit in line with the iFoil.
The Meteor Unlimited Color.
Colors. That's what Marco was just saying.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I think
is
roller was
1070.
different. The roller at
No.
Really?
No. Everything was the same as iFoil S, just the temperature was higher.
Oh yeah, the rubber on the roller was different to accommodate the higher temperatures.
Right.
Yeah,
but to
of
get
course.
that hot sheet out of a 1070 and put it straight through, that was.
Yeah, it was 1070 engine, and had you have the infrared lamp between the engine and iFoil to keep the toner warm.
That's right.
Right.
You also have this, and then I have it at two customers.
I hung a heat lamp that was kind of rudimentary, but anyway, I digress. Well, Natalie, Joe, I'm really happy that you're here. It was great to hear from you. You've already given us some education and some insight. I hope you join us on future calls. It was great to have you. And Natalie, to be able to hear about things through the eyes of a new operator is quite exciting too. We would love to shorten your learning curve and make you an expert in a short amount of time. And with guys like Matt and Marco here, it's going to be great for you to attend. I think you're going to get a lot of great knowledge. I hope you found this helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for holding the space. I feel like, in this short 30 minutes, like I've taken so many notes, like learning bunch already.
Well, we'll send you a video. We'll post this in the JetForce community, the video and a recap of all the different notes. A couple of quick housekeeping things. First of all, a big congrats to Matt Redbear, who just won 2 Gold Leaf Awards at the FSCA Embellishment Conference. So well done on that work and getting those events. And did anybody else submit? Joe, did you guys submit for the Gold Leaf Awards?
I wasn't even aware of it until right now, but congratulations on that.
Yeah, we got to get you guys to fill that stuff out for next year. It's held by the FSCA, the Foil and Specialty Effects Association, and it's just the most beautiful embellished print that you've ever seen, both digital and analog. And anyways, he won 2 major awards last month, so that's big. And then number 2, so congratulations, Matt. Number 2, we're having a designer meetup on, what is it, the 20? For Drupal, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I have it up there somewhere. Anyways, it's
24th, Friday the 24th.
Right, on Friday the 24th, we're going to be having a designer meetup. So it's open to everybody, whether you're inside the JetForce community or not. So send it to designers who design for you, or anybody in your team that is involved in design. This stuff has really, really grown. We had a lot of people at the last meeting, and even more that are planning to come to the next one. So we're holding another space for just designers to understand how to design this technology better. And Matt Redbear will be hosting it as well. So
Kevin, do you have that link available? You could put it in the chat.
Yes, I'll put that link for sure.
And also, Kevin, if you could remind them, we have a forum that we all monitor in case you guys get stuck or you've got a question or you're flat out confused. We'll dig for the resources to get an answer to your question if at all possible. So become a member of the JetForce, and you'll have that at your disposal as well as a tool in the toolbox.
That's right. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link here, add it to your calendars, send this link to anybody who you think needs design help or wants to talk about design. It's in the meeting chat. Matt has been thrown down a challenge in the last meeting.
Yeah.
Which he's going to have to overcome live. So somebody's going to send him a low-res image, and he has to show how he's going to upscale it, create a mask for it live in front of the entire design community. So no pressure, Matt.
No pressure.
It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Ken, thank you so much for hosting. Again, we couldn't do this without you, my friend. And all of you guys, welcome to the community. Please come back. Please come to all our meetings. If you have any questions, ask. And we will see you next time, hopefully on the 24th.
Great. Thanks, everybody.